So welcome to our Way of the Weaver open house, and also happy belting. We're going to basically do, as far as to orient you into what we're going to do today, we're going to do some short introductions of myself and Murphy and an overview of the Way of the Weaver 9-month program, which we often refer to as our foundational year. We're going to hear from some people that have participated in Way of the Weaver, so you can hear about it from others. And then we're going to do a brief learning offering, and that's going to be Murphy and I are going to offer some thoughts on cleansing and grounding in a non-appropriative way. And then we'll also have time at the end for lots of questions and answers. And so with that, I am going to light a candle here on my altar at home. And we light this candle as a tradition every time we meet in Way of the Weaver. And it's a candle that represents the flame of our hearts and our hearths, our homes, that's a flame of welcome for all of those unseen ones. And unseen ones may include any gods, any guides, any ancestors, spirits, familiars, elementals, land guardians, who may or may not be embodied. And we welcome all those who are here to teach us, to observe us, here out of curiosity or to support us. We offer this flame for you, so welcome.
Welcome to those unseen ones. I'm going to do a land acknowledgement for us. It's another thing that we do at the start of all of our sessions. And today I am on the land of the Western Abenaki, teaching from these lands, and Jamie is teaching from the lands of the Muskogee people. And we just want to send honor and gratitude to the elders of these peoples and the elders of all the lands that we're gathering from today, and as this like web of Zoom brings us together. And we want to acknowledge and affirm the sovereignty of those peoples on this land, and you know, the stewardship that they are still doing here in these places where we live, that we may or may not know about. And I invite you all to take a moment wherever you are to send prayers of support and respect to the Indigenous peoples who are native to your land and offer us this inspiring legacy of survival and stewardship in the place that you're calling in from. And Jamie's going to post a link in the chat if you don't know what people's land you're on. It's a really good thing to know, to be respectful of that space. And you can look it up on the website that Jamie's going to post. So thanks to the land and its peoples.
Yes, I posted the link in the chat to find the Indigenous peoples of the lands on which you live. And that is for mostly North America and Canada at this point in time. But we know there are Indigenous peoples all around the world, so we recognize that as well. And now we're going to just give a brief introduction of ourselves. Murphy and I founded this program out of sort of a mutual desire to be in each other's company, learn from each other, and study magic together. And so that's how Way of the Weaver came about. And as for myself, my influences are a lot of mythologists and artists, such as Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, Sharon Blackie, Willem Morris Baird, Mary Oliver, George O'Keeffe, Rachel Pollack. My magical background or my teaching background comes from being a priestess of the Sisterhood of Avalon for 13 years. And I've taught and facilitated ritual at many different other gatherings around the country, such as Where Women Gather and Vermont Witch Camp. And now I primarily do a lot of magical work around death and dying and transitions. I still work with Welsh mythology quite a bit and the folk magic of the British Isles. I also do oracle and aspecting work, tarot, ritual creation, and lots of magical works of art. Murphy?
So I'm Murphy Robinson. I use they, them pronouns, identify as transmasculine. I'm calling in from Abenaki land here in what is sometimes called Vermont. And my spiritual teachers over the years have included people like Starhawk, both through her books and workshops, Lila June, who is a Navajo writer and artist with some very inspiring teachings, and also Diana Paxson is someone I've learned a lot from, both in books and in person. She does a lot of work around reclaiming Norse traditions in a anti-racist way, and also around trance journeying and the runes, which are both things that I've become really excited about. I've also learned a lot of my skills from being a part of emergent community experiences. So I've been going to Vermont Witch Camp for like 14 years now, and I've been a teacher for them for the past 5 years. Also been to Wildmane Witch Camp. Way back in the day, I kind of started out, cut my teeth at women's circles in Western Massachusetts, which is a goddess-focused camp there. And I've also just taken part in gatherings and covens and circles across the country. I used to be very nomadic as a wilderness guide, moving around the country with the seasons. And so I've had little tastes of the pagan community all over, certainly all over Turtle Island and a little bit in Britain. And my magical specialties include the runes. I'm really inspired by and connected to the runes, both for divination and for spell work and for like the magical beings that they are in their own right. I have done a lot of work around understanding Norse tradition paganism, and I was a medieval studies major in college, which helps me like delve into that culture and understand some of the literature that our knowledge of it comes from. I also do a lot of work with trance journeying, which is sort of a very widespread spiritual skill that many people may have heard called something like shamanic journeying in the past. We don't use the word shamanic because shaman is a word from Siberian culture, and the Siberian medicine people who use that word have asked that other people who are not a part of that tradition don't use that word because they're not Siberian and it's not the same thing. So we use the word trance, if you're wondering what that means. And I'm also deeply involved in the sacred hunt. So that is a practice that for me mostly just consists of deer hunting in a way that brings me into devotion and balance and harmony and reciprocity with the deer of these lands. I also do a lot of foraging and other kinds of wild food harvesting to try and build relationship with the natural world. And the reason that I'm wearing antlers today, which I might take off in a little bit, but is I was just at the Big Beltane celebration in Montpelier, Vermont, near where I live. It's called All Species Day, and everyone dresses up as their favorite species. And of course, the stag is one of my favorite animals. And yeah, I take a lot of medicine from that. I also have my dog Clyde beside me today because he got really hit hard by a porcupine this morning and he just needs extra cuddles. So if you hear little barks here and there, that's Clyde helping out. That's me.
Thanks, Murphy. So like I said, today we're going to talk a bit about our 9-month program, which we refer to as the foundation year, which includes 4 in-person retreats and also 9 Zoom sessions in between to support and continue our work. Now we do offer online modules as well. The pandemic, basically, because we couldn't meet in person anymore, but we still wanted to continue studying magic and justice and practicing those things in community. So this year, over the past year, in the fall, we offered a 3-month module on death priestessing, tending the threshold of transition. And then in the winter time, we offered divination for liberation. So looking at divination within sort of a justice framework. And right now we're in the third module, which is our spell work laboratory. So we're completely studying different kinds of spells and how to work those spells and how to have personal integrity and ethics when we're working with things like that. And those shorter modules have been really fun. And they've also given us an opportunity to have weavers join us from all across the world. We have some from Canada, some from the UK. So that's been really awesome. So if you're not like local to Vermont or the surrounding area, it's, that's some way that you can join and be with the group. So that's awesome. I noticed that I don't see Murphy anymore, but I do see Murphy's phone. Are you there, Murphy? Okay. And I think Murphy is going to tell us. Okay, great. Murphy's going to tell us a little bit more about the 9-month foundation year now.
So forgive me if I'm repeating anything. I just had my landmate had asked me a question. A lot of people hear this term of Way of the Weaver, and they're like, "Oh, are you like learning how to use a loom?" And that's not quite exactly how we mean it. When we started our program, we wanted to teach skills that are something that when I first started in magical practice, I would have called priestessing. And sometimes people now use the gender neutral term priestixing with an X, like Latinx, to make it gender neutral. But that term is not totally widely recognized, or like some people get confused by it and stuff like that. And we opted, there's terms like witch, which some people think is like gender neutral or use it that way, but other people see it as a very feminine word. And there's a lot of layers of the culture of magic that have feminism woven into them, because feminism has really like grown strongly alongside modern magical practice and really nurtured it and explored it in powerful ways. And a lot of the practitioners have been female. But we really wanted a gender neutral word, because a lot of the people in our program are not of a binary gender, or they're transgender, or maybe they're a cis man. We've had some cis men in our Zoom classes, so I don't think we've had them in our in-person classes yet. But and so we chose this word of weaver because we were inspired by a chant written by Shekinah Mountain Water, that one of the verses in the chant is, "We are the weavers, we are the web." And that really speaks to our understanding of how magic works, and how spirituality can work, and how we're like weaving the threads of energy in our lives, and we're weaving our words and actions in ways that promote justice. And we just really like that word as a metaphor. So that's what we mean by Way of the Weaver. I think everyone who's on this call has probably figured that out, but I just wanted to address it. And let's see. Jamie, you already covered the general overview of it, right?
I did. Of the foundation year? Yeah.
Yeah.
The general format, I think it's probably still worth mentioning exactly what we're teaching and what our training is grounded in. So some of our values.
Yeah, great. Awesome. So Jamie mentioned the 4 weekends and all of that, which give us the ability to be in person and also like have Zoom sessions in between. We're trying to make it geographically accessible for people and also financially accessible for people, because the retreats cost more money for us to put on, and then we have to charge more for the program. But some of the things that you will learn in the foundation year, if you decide you want to join us for that, are creating an ethical framework for your magic is the thing that we always start with in any course that we teach, because ethics are extremely important to us. And we have a lot of values around justice. So that is, a key part to consider the ethics of everything that you're doing, to make sure that you're working within a justice framework. We are going to talk about shielding and psychic self-protection and those and grounding and cleansing, which we're talking about today. All of those kind of self-care pieces of like foundational ways to really make sure that you are safe and grounded and like making the best kind of decisions and thinking clearly as you're dealing with these forces. We're going to talk about magical herbalism, which is one of Jamie's specialties. We will definitely dive deep into the trance journey practice, and we really walk people through a step-by-step process of developing a really controlled and skillful way of navigating that other world space and getting information and creating transformation on that plane that is then manifested on this plane. It's a pretty awesome, set of skills and a way to interact with deity and ancestors and all of these forces that we can't necessarily interact with easily in mundane consciousness. We definitely focus on the skill set of trauma-aware tending, like compassionate tending of each other. Magical work, especially powerful in-person ritual, can bring up a lot of emotions for people, and people can have real breakthroughs, and people can have the breakdown that's part of the breakthrough. So we work on really creating a culture of tending each other in that way. We'll talk about devotion, polytheism, animism, the different ways in. Not everyone feels really excited about working with deity. For some people, that's a little too abstract. Some people want to talk more about the trees and the rocks and the energies in the earth in that animist way. So we try to make room for all of that. We have an activist framework in everything that we do. We talk about positive peace, which is a principle of Kingian nonviolence. And we try to bring like a transformative justice framework to the work that we do and how we tend our community. And we focus a lot on having the accurate cultural context for everything we do, especially like working with the 5 elements, calling the directions, things like that, things that have become very interwoven in New Age spirituality between the cultures of Turtle Island, or North America, it's also called, and the cultures, ancestral cultures of Europe. It's sort of gotten all muddled together, and it's part of the discernment work, particularly for white people or anyone who is a settler in Turtle Island of some kind, to kind of tease those apart and understand what your own culture teaches about that versus what has perhaps been stolen from another culture in a way that's not consensual, and how we can be an ethical balance around that. So Jamie and I love to research those things and get to the root of it and talk about that with everyone. We also encourage people to build their own daily practice, and we have little chat loops and things like that on the Signal app that we do with our group, so we can connect with each other and reinforce and share pictures of our altars and have that group encouragement of doing something with other people. And we are serious about magic, but we also have a lot of fun, if you couldn't tell by the fact that I'm wearing deer antlers today. So we definitely are both serious and lighthearted about it, I would say. And we really see this as a skill set for spiritual transformation and growth. And it's rooted in the values of service and inclusive community and a critical analysis of privilege and oppression. So we're going to always study where the magical techniques came from, cite our sources, and avoid cultural appropriation as much as we can. We're always learning more, which we'll be talking more about today.
That was great, Murphy. Thank you.
Anything to add, Jamie, that I didn't hit on?
You did a great job. And also, if it hasn't become obvious, we do put it straight out there in front in all of our things, and we really mean it. We dismiss ideas of secrecy or hierarchy, or there being gatekeeping around mysteries, things like that. We're on equal footing here in our Weaver community, and that's something we really love. And we also welcome adults of all genders from all backgrounds into our program. So we do, the only request that we ask is that you're 18 years or older. So just wanted to mention that too.
Well, yeah, thanks, Jamie. That's good to clarify. Why we have our gender neutral term.
Yeah. So we thought maybe if some of our Weaver alumni are game for it, they could maybe talk about their experiences or what they've learned or what they've liked. We'd love to hear from some of the folks on the call. I think we have, we have 1, 2, 3. We have 3 alumni, I think, on the call right now. Willow, would you be up for that?
Sure. So it's interesting for me, the term Weaver came to me. I think of myself as a community weaver. And so when this program came up, I was like, oh, I got to be part of this. because I already identified with the word weaver in terms of how it is presented in the program. My experience with the first year, the 9-month module, was really pivotal to me to like really dig into my daily practices, and with trance in particular, was that beginning was really foundational to me for really deepening into my own magic. One of the things that I really appreciate about the program, whether it's the 9-month program or the modules, because I've attended all of them, is that they're different. They're definitely different. But the thing that I appreciated was that there isn't this, like, you got to do this. This is the homework. You got to finish the homework. It's like there are invitations to deepen into the work. So there isn't any real, like, gosh, I have a lot of issues around how education is run. And so I really felt well held in this program, because it's like, here are some invitations to practice. Here are some ways to deepen into this exploration on your own. But still, each time you came to a gathering, the in-person gathering or online, there was more to learn in the class. I'll also say that I really appreciated the containers around just ethics and consent culture, which is really important to me as someone who has, I live with a lot of trauma. So I felt well held as a person dealing with those things, well held in the spaces that were created, knowing that I felt safer in these spaces. And I'll just say that, like, Jamie and Murphy, the skills that they bring to the weavers are immense. And I just, no matter what, there's always more. There's just always more. There's always a deepening. And I always just feel like the learning is not linear, and it's really just about, it's like a circle. It's like a spiral. And so I'm really happy to be part of this, continue to be part of this. It's like a home to me. So thank you. I hope I've helped you see some of what the experience was for me. I think I'll say one more thing, which is I fell in love with the runes. I've been working with the runes, since the 9-month module that we started, before the pandemic. And then I really just felt like there were the weavers as a group, not just Jamie and Murphy, but the weavers as a group hold each other in the exploration. So thank you. And I hope to see some of y'all around in Weaver space. Check.
Thanks, Willow. That was really sweet. Thank you so much. There's no pressure to speak up, but we do have a couple other folks who I know have completed online modules. Did y'all want to add anything or talk about your experiences?
I'll talk if that's welcome, for sure. I've done the first 2 modules with Jamie and Murphy, the divination and the death priestixing, and we're kind of embarking through the spell work laboratory right now. And for me, they've been like really crucial throughout this year, and just like being able to ground and center myself and feel like I'm both building my magical practice as well as like maintaining magical hygiene, I guess that's the way I like to say it, just by having a community that I can show up for and be in space with, and to talk about magic and folklore. If anyone loves folklore, I feel like Jamie and Murphy are just immense resources, and I have so much fun like getting all of the real historical information, and I really am grateful for all of the work and digging that they do to really present the information in an accurate way. So we're really trying to do that detanglement work and the decolonizing work and trace roots to the traditions. I would also say that I do take a lot of classes all over the interwebs on Zoom, and of all of them, I feel like the work that I've done with the Weavers as a group, and the way that Jamie and Murphy address the group, has been like the safest community for me, the most comfortable community for me, where like language and identity are really valued and addressed and acknowledged. Whereas even in other communities, sometimes where you don't think that would come up, it shows up, and it's difficult for me to know how to navigate that. But at the beginning of the program, Jamie and Murphy also always go through like the ethical structure, as well as the accountability process and the agreements for being in the program. And I feel like the group agreements that they have put the time into creating like really help to hold the container in a helpful way. So I'm very grateful for that. And I've had so much fun. So that's why I'm curious about the in-person program and very excited. Thank you.
Thanks, Aurora-san. We really have loved having you in the online modules. It's been amazing. And the group agreements that Aurora is referring to, those were actually they were sort of, they manifested during our first foundation year. We created those together as a group, and we used those as sort of a stepping stone for each module. So we use the baseline group agreements, but then we ask for alterations, amendments, additions, things like that, so that we all have a framework for what our container is going to look like and how it's going to function together. So yeah, it's a really important part of our culture. Did you want to add anything, Murphy?
I think you covered what I was going to say.
Great.
Anyone else want to give any reflections, or should we move on?
I can give a reflection.
Oh, great. Thanks, Elvin. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I've done the online divination module, and I'm in the midst of the spell work module. I came from a very different background, and this is really my first exposure to magic using and weaving as a practitioner. And it's been immensely helpful in terms of building, or in my case, rebuilding a spiritual practice that feels ethically and morally grounded, as well as something that I can use to serve the larger community. And I think so much of my exposure to spirituality or religion was very toxic or very hierarchical or domineering in different ways, and this has been so refreshing and has really created a personal practice for me that I feel like I can take forward into the world with confidence, rather than something that I feel obliged or guilty even to share with other people. So thank you for creating this space.
Oh, thanks, Owen. It's wonderful to hear how it's unfolding in your life. Thanks to everyone who shared about their experiences. We always want to like give all the Weavers a little voice in that, and not center me and Jamie's voices to the exclusion of others. We always try to be as inclusive as we can, and like what wisdom enters the cauldron together. So we appreciate that. And without further ado, I think we're going to move on to our little teaching bit around cleansing and grounding. So Jamie's up first.
Okay, great. So in the New Age or the pagan or the magical world, you may be very familiar with the term smudging, or to smudge something or someone, or to purify with smoke. Now, smoke purification has existed in many cultures around the world, but the term smudging actually refers to a very specific ritual technology, and it's really appropriate to apply that on sort of a mass scale to any sort of smoke cleansing that we're doing. In addition to that, a lot of what folks do when they're smudging is they use white sage, which is a limited resource and also an herb that is very special to the indigenous people that steward and tend it and use it for ritual purposes. So, we like to teach a few different methods that come from our lineages. One of my lineages is from Scotland. And so today I'm going to show you an example of purification with water. To sort of, this serves in the same role in a ritual that like smudging or purification with smoke would take. So this technique is called seining, and I'm going to actually put that into the chat so you can understand what I'm saying. Seining. Yes, Rook, seining. So, and I'm also going to post an article after I get done demonstrating this. It's a really good blog post from a Scottish practitioner in Scotland on how to do seining and the folklore and traditions around it and how it was used, which is a really, really good post. And just while we're on that point, another thing that I wanted to point out is you won't hear me saying I'm Scottish. You'll hear me saying I have Scottish lineage. And that's really important because, I don't live in Scotland. I haven't grown up in Scotland. And there are many things and experiences that go into being, on the land of a place and in the culture of a place. And I don't want to, again, appropriate things that aren't mine. So I am of Scottish descent. It's in my lineage. And this is a tradition from my ancestors that I'd like to share. So seining is very simple. The way I like to do it is with this is a very shallow bowl, and I've filled the bowl with water. And one of the plants that has been used for seining is the juniper plant. And I just happen to have juniper in my yard. So I asked the plant's permission if I could take a twig to use to demonstrate with you today. And it's very, very simple. You simply dip it in to the water. And if you're seining yourself, purifying yourself for ritual practice, post-ritual practice even, you just sprinkle. That's it, really. You just sprinkle. And you can do this to a person with their consent. You can do this to a space. You can do this to ritual objects. It's just a really nice, very gentle way to purify. If you are wanting to burn something and do smoke cleansing, there are more appropriate herbs for those of us of European descent to use. Two of them that I like to use are mugwort and blue vervain. Those are two that I use a lot. And I would also encourage you, if you're going to do smoke cleansing, to maybe step away from using the bundle format that we typically see kind of mass marketed even these days, because again, that's part of the smudging technology. And I know my ancestors, people of my lineage, would often take these herbs and put them right into a fire or on a hot coal. So there's a little bit more of, refining of the technique that we can do in a really non-appropriative way, if that makes sense. So I'm going to go ahead and, it looks like Murphy did it for me already. Thanks, Murphy. Posted that blog article on seining. And I'm going to turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jamie. I'm going to talk a little bit about grounding and sort of shielding and protection kind of techniques, because we find that to be super foundational to doing good, powerful, magical work. And unlike the, like the ubiquitous white sage smudge that is from the Lakota people, that is like everybody's using, the most common grounding technique is not appropriated from a native culture that I'm aware of. The most common grounding that probably you've been led through before in some event is like the roots and branches, the tree of life grounding, where you like feel the energy in your body sink down from your spine or from the soles of your feet and like create a root down into the earth and spread out and have good exchange of energy with the earth there to like charge you up. And then you might also have like branches going up into the sky, connecting with the energy of the celestial bodies and bringing that energy down into your body, letting them mix together and create kind of an energetic purification and also like charging up, and having that deep connection to the earth where you can release unneeded energy, whether it's excess energy or some kind of negative energy. You can let that go down into the earth to be composted and draw up a more clean energy that you're looking for, to be feeling balanced and stable. And this technique is based on this tree of life concept that is present in many, many cultures. The two that I'm most familiar with are the Celtic tree of life, and the Norse cosmology has Yggdrasil, that's the world tree, that's all of the like worlds that beings live in are like in the branches and roots and trunk of the world tree. So that actually is a European derived practice in part. I'm not well researched in what sacred tree traditions there are in the cultures of Turtle Island. I would definitely guess that they have them too, but I think this is one of those things that's possible to do in many ways through many cultures, and researching your own ancestry allows you to do it in a way where you have an understanding of how they were framing that sort of thing. And you can kind of be functioning from that framework. And another thing that we try to do is to bring in modern trauma awareness techniques and somatic embodiment techniques, which have been being like focused on and developed by psychologists and therapists and practitioners a lot just in recent years. Like in the past 10 or 15 years, there have been a lot of breakthroughs in this. And there's a lot of activists of color that have participated in creating and nurturing these traditions to deal with trauma. And so it's a very, the way it's framed in these circles is a very modern technique. It's based on our understanding of neurobiology and how our bodies react to stress and things like that. So Jamie's going to teach us real quick a technique that she learned from a teacher from an embodied activism class that had studied somatic techniques. Jamie, are you there?
I'm here. I just want to type into the chat the source of where I learned this, and feel free to share. When it was taught to me, I was told to share. It is from an individual named Nkem Ndefo, who teaches a course called Embodied Activism, which I highly recommend, especially if you're interested in justice work, but doing it in a healthy and supportive way, sustainable way. Just typed that into the chat. And Nkem called this the butterfly hug and hum technique. So, and this is an invitation. You certainly don't have to do this if you don't desire, but the invitation is to take your hands, have your palms facing you, and link your thumbs like a butterfly. And then if it feels good, you can bring that close to your body. You can stop at any point, or you can continue on and touch your body and let your hands rest on the upper arms, let your palms rest over the heart. And then you want to flutter your fingers like a butterfly, just a very soft, gentle way to remind yourself that you're here, you're present, you're in your body. And then finally, humming really soothes the central nervous system. So as you're doing this, there's another invitation to gently hum to yourself. Mm. And that's a really nice little somatic settling exercise.
Thank you, Jamie. I love when you teach that. And just in terms of understanding cultural appropriation a little bit, I think most folks have, if you're on this call, you may have gotten a link that I sent out to a 4-part blog series on cultural appropriation that's on my blog, that sort of explains how we approach cultural appropriation, how we understand it. But I can see how some people might be a little confused, like, oh, you're like teaching this technique that was taught to you by a person of color. Is that cultural appropriation? And it all depends on the intent and the permission and the relationship. And in this case, Jamie learned this technique in a class that was meant for everybody. It was not limited to people of one cultural background, and they were encouraged to share these techniques as far, so they can be useful to everyone as far as they'd like, which is different than using white sage to smudge when there are many Lakota people saying, like, actually, please don't use this. For one, it's endangered, and for two, it's like our culture, and we want to have say over who we get to share this with.
And also, you'll note that we gave attribution, like we credited the source of where it comes from, which is very important too.
Yes, and being in reciprocal relationship of some kind. Jamie like offered monetary exchange for this class and is like in relationship in that way. So some other things that I can recommend around grounding that are partially things that I learned in a trauma-informed somatic awareness class are tactile grounding cues. So maybe you have some items on your altar at home or by your bed that are very good at drawing you into your body through texture and feeling. So there could be like some smooth rocks, like the worry stones that people carry in their pockets. Some people really like the feeling of bones, a cured bone that carries that life energy of that animal in it as well. And animal pelts with the fur on, or tan as buckskin, have an incredibly inviting, comforting, tactile feeling, if that's something that you feel good being in a relationship with. Also, the like warm tea or a hot water bottle, those kinds of like nourishing temperatures and relationships with water. And some people really like a heavy blanket to just feel that weight of gravity on their body, the way that grounds them to the earth. So there are a lot of different tactile grounding cues that you can use if the roots and branches one isn't speaking to you, or you just need something else. And then we also talk a lot about like shielding and protection work, energetic protection. So the way I learned this was to visualize a shield around my body if I'm trying to shield my body. That's sort of, people talk about the aura, which is something, and an energetic field that's understood in different ways in different cultures. But visualizing an energetic barrier around you that can have different qualities. You could create just a clear, transparent bubble that just keeps the energy around you clean and bright, lets in the good, the bad, the negative, the unhelpful just slides right off of it. If you need a little more protection, you could, or maybe you want to be a little more unnoticed or hidden, you could visualize your personal energetic shield as having a like one-way mirror surface where you can see out, you can see everything that's going on around you, but people aren't going to see in. If they look towards you, they're just going to see reflected everything else that's around them. It's sort of a cloaking, going unnoticed, moving in safety by not being seen. Depending on what situation you're in, you can use these like on a dark street at night, that sort of thing. And for even more protection, you could put up something that has got like thorns, like rose vines in your personal shield that have those protective thorns that are gonna really ward off anything that wants to come and tangle with you that isn't helpful, isn't supportive. So we worked with that visualizing of a shield in a way to help keep us grounded when we're encountering activating situations. And we also use like shielding or warding techniques for our spaces. So our homes, our cars, our workplaces, our ritual circles where we're doing magic, things like that. We talk about traditional warding tools and techniques like rowan berries and the close relative of the rowan is the mountain ash here in Turtle Island, are traditionally used to ward thresholds. Ash from your hearth, if you have a hearth, a wood stove, or a fireplace or something like that, or ash from a sacred fire that you had somewhere out, a campfire, can be sprinkled around the perimeter of your property. Salt is also traditionally used. Don't put salt near your precious garden plants, but a little bit of salt is very purifying. You can sprinkle that around the perimeter of a space that you want to protect. There's also a lot of traditions of guardian spirits. There's many of these traditions in European-based cultures. In the Norse tradition that I've studied a lot, they're called house wights. Wights is spelled W-I-G-H-T. It's not the color white. It's an Old Norse word that means spirit, like some kind of spirit that's non-corporeal. So the house wight is the spirit of your home that you can work with, you can give offerings to, you can ask them to protect and look over your home in a certain way. Most modern people are not in relationship with their house wights, but in the old Scandinavian times, everyone would be making offerings all the time to the house wights to help keep their home safe, and their barns and their livestock and all of that. The gargoyles that you see on old European cathedrals are another version of this. They're meant to scare off the evil spirits and make sure that only good enters into that holy worship space. And there's also a lot of protective plant spirits. Like there's certain plants that were planted around the threshold. Like in Norse culture, the elderberry plant was considered really, really sacred. And there was sort of this elder crone spirit that lived in an elderberry that would be protective of your house as long as you respected her. If you went cutting that plant without a reason and without permission, you would bring bad luck upon your house. And so there's a lot of different protective plant spirits like that you can research that people use to kind of ward a space. In the program, we also study runes and bind runes. Bind runes are a way of combining different runes into a magical sigil. And that's a way that you can protect your spaces or your car or whatever. And also just communicating with whatever entities are already there. If you have a sense that maybe there are some ghosts of some kind, some ancestor spirits in your space, it's really good to have a positive relationship with them and to figure out if they need anything from you and figure out if you need to set any boundaries with them. And there are old European traditions, both in Greek culture and in British culture, of dryads, of tree spirits. So if you have trees on your property or trees in a place where you go in the forest to do magical work or something like that, you can be in relationship with those dryads who are the guardian spirits of that grove. So it's a lot about coming into relationship with those unseen beings. And then from an animist perspective, you can actually have relationship with the spirit of each thing, a spirit of the stones, the spirit of the grass in your lawn, the spirit of the pigeon outside your apartment in a city. You can communicate on a spiritual level with the spirits of all things and make sure that you are having a good, consensual, properly boundaried experience with everything around you. And I think a lot of people in our culture struggle with boundaries, and we struggle with boundaries with other people. And we struggle with boundaries with institutions, cultural institutions we've created. And it can really help and be a really powerful practice ground to have good boundaries, good agreements, good reciprocity set up with the unseen spirits in our spaces. And setting that up reminds us and encourages us to set those boundaries with wherever we need to in our lives. And man, it sure helps you stay grounded if you have good boundaries set up and you don't get thrown off kilter. So that's what I have to share today on grounding and a little bit on shielding. And we're gonna have a nice long time for questions and answers, both about this material we taught and about the programs that we offer, the foundation year, the modules that we offer in the fall, winter, and spring over Zoom. And we're gonna stop the recording because we want people to be able to ask questions freely and not feel self-conscious that somebody later is gonna be watching a recording of the question that we asked. But if you are watching the recording later, we just want to make sure that you knew how to get in touch with us. So I'm going to copy here in the chat The link to, if you want to apply for any of our programs or just learn more about them, you can go to mountainsongexpeditions.com, that's my business, /Way of the Weaver, and that will take you to a page about our values, our program framework, and you can click through the foundation year and find the application right there. We do have an application process where we want to make sure it's a good fit, because we do create such a safe community container, hopefully, for doing really deep work. And you can also email us anytime with questions about the program at wayoftheweaver@gmail.com. So anything else you want to say, Jamie, before we switch off the recording and do Q&A?
No, I'd just like to offer my gratitude and thanks if you're watching this recording in the future. We really appreciate it, and be in touch. So I'm going to go ahead and switch it off for now.